Bennie, I'm excited about this one. We have Super Bowl champion, owner, creator, philanthropist, Jordan Norwood here with us. What's up, Jordan?
Hey man, it's an honor to be here with you guys.
You can't start
And you
lying.
still have the longest punt return in Super Bowl history, right?
No,
Kadarius Toney
man.
did he break that?
He broke it, and if we run it back, I feel like he stepped out of bounds. Maybe a yard prior, but yeah, he broke the record.
We don't like Kansas City in here, so I mean,
Hey,
we're not
pay
giving
well.
them any credit. So
They pay well. That's all I'm saying. I gotta say though, man, I want you to look at something next time, Jordan. When you had that punt return, for some reason I thought we were down on that end. Like I was on the kicking side end. And so he caught it. So I'm like, oh crap, we're gonna be late to get to the huddle. So I'm jogging down as you're running towards us. And I'm like, hey, I'm dodging. If you watch it on our sideline, I'm dodging like two referees because I know if we get hit, flag's coming out.
You should have threw a block, man.
I didn't need to. Look at you with all that speed.
going even back to the punt return. Don't get me wrong, Super Bowl 50 punt return was super incredible and led to us, ultimately getting that win. But I also think about your punt return against Pittsburgh, which was called back, if I'm not correct.
It was Ryan's fault also.
Running on the field.
I wasn't alone, but I was one of the.
You didn't fair catch that one. Did you do the same thing that you did in Super Bowl?
No, so that one was that was a case of the ball hitting the ground, it's rolling on the ground, right near the sideline, and Pittsburgh decided to touch the ball. Which not many people know the rule, but punt returners know this rule. Yeah. If the other team touches the ball, then the punt returning team can pick up the ball and run it. I can fumble it, no matter what, it's going to be our ball. So I know that rule very well. I'm like daydreaming about when this is going to happen in my career. And they touch the ball right near the sideline. I just run over and scoop it up and run, maybe 70 yards for a touchdown. Ryan Harris, somebody ran on the field too early. Got
I was
called
excited, man. You hadn't done it all year. You gonna wait till week 15 and start running stuff back? No.
You didn't look excited, man. You were walking.
Moseying.
I remember watching that in film, and I had no idea what had happened. I had no idea that the offense was out there because I was on punt return blocking, but I had no idea that you guys ran out there. Yeah. I mean, offensive linemen.
We try and get a head start, man. Try and get a head start.
A head start to run 10 yards?
Hey, man.
It's a 20-yard jog onto the field.
It's interesting to think, about whether it's the punt return in Pittsburgh. What I think about most with Jordan is when you had your first child.
Okay.
And he was in the locker room like 3 days later. So for those of us who've had children, fulfilled our bond.
I haven't done that yet.
There's something weird that happens, especially in the NFL. When you come back, first of all, you're with your family and it's all family. And then you come back and nobody cares that you just had a child, right? And I remember you were sitting there. It was early because you got there early. And you had your hands in your head and you're sitting there. I was like, hey, man, don't worry. It gets easier. And you looked up at me like, oh, thanks, man. Like, how did you know I was talking about my kid? And since then, to me, we were always friends because we had that shared bond as fathers.
Absolutely, man. And the crazy thing is that there's different types of organizations. And you've been on a few, both of us, all of us have. But I was nervous to say, hey, can I go meet my wife she's in labor?
Yeah.
Because I was in organizations before, I won't name them, where you should be nervous to ask to leave work.
Name them.
Yeah.
Call them out.
And one of our coaches on our staff that year, I had our first kid, he made me send a picture. He's like,
my goodness.
Congratulations, send a photo. I was like, send a photo? Am I going to lie about that? Like, I'm in this euphoric space as a father, and I got to send a picture to this coach. Unbelievable.
Yeah, meanwhile, Kubiak sent some flowers.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so...
Nice. Shout out to Coach Coob.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to Coach Coob. Just diving into the conversation, man. You're an undrafted free agent, correct? Yeah, you're undrafted. I mean, we have that in common. Yeah. One of my earliest mentors in the league, I forgot, maybe you had been maybe year 4 or 5 when I first met you, and killed it during the preseason, my rookie year, and then tore your ACL. But talk about your undrafted journey, man. Like, to play as long as you played, up until last year's longest punt return in Super Bowl history, just an incredible teammate. Talk about your undrafted journey. Like, what team did it start with, and like, how did you get to that point where we won the Super Bowl together?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a unique journey. Honestly, I mean, obviously, a lot of players go undrafted, and end up playing a long time. For me, obviously undersized, undrafted out of Penn State. 2 other Penn State receivers got drafted that year in the 3rd round, and they were both undersized also. So I was like, oh, I'll probably get drafted in the 4th round then. But anyways, no, it was definitely a grind. Even if you are drafted, it's a grind. But I always seemed to make football teams when I did make the football team because of my skill at wide receiver, which doesn't typically happen, I don't think. For undrafted wide receivers, typically you're making the team as a punt returner or a gunner on special teams running down on kickoff. I never did any of those things because I'm not big enough or strong enough to. I've done it in preseason and got tossed all over the place. But yeah, so it's super interesting. Just like you said, I had a great preseason, killed it, and then tore my ACL. That was the history of my career. I'm, a route runner. I catch the football. I'm coachable. A great third receiver, period. Even if I don't have a spot on special teams, they feel like they need me on the roster somewhere. So that was kind of my journey, and ended up. So started in Cleveland, undrafted, got cut that year, went to Philadelphia for their practice squad, got cut the next year, went back to Cleveland, spent 3 years there, got cut. Tampa Bay, got cut, then ended up in Denver. So. I think I've got cut more times than I've made a football team coming out of training camp. But, you just keep playing, man.
Talk about that journey. I think that's one of the things that maybe people are starting to get an insight to now in terms of shows that are coming out or Hard Knocks. But moving from city to city, my wife, because we didn't get married till after I was done, but maybe towards the back end half of my career, she got to see how much I was moving, and she was moving with me. Talk about how hard that is in terms of you're really living out of a suitcase, and you can't pack that much or buy furniture or anything like that as an undrafted player.
Absolutely not. Never. We've probably all learned the hard way at some point. I remember in Cleveland, signing with Cleveland, thinking I'm going to make the team. Got the U-Haul, brought all my stuff out to Cleveland. Got cut a week and a half later. So driving it right back to State College, Pennsylvania, where I went to college. But, that's just the way it is. Even, I think it was year 6 by the time I got out here to Denver. So I was out of football 2013. 2014, I'm in Denver, having a great training camp, thinking I'm going to make the team, but I don't buy no lease an apartment, buy any furniture, team hotel.
Yeah.
And then I tear my ACL, and then at that point, I'm like, okay, well now a torn ACL tells me I'm going to be here all year,
right? Which is crazy.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? So the second I tear my ACL, I'm like, okay, I have no apartment. I know I'm going to be here all year rehabbing. So I had just met my now wife, Aaliyah, at that point. So she's
to Aaliyah.
Yeah, she's the one that drove me to my surgery. We had been dating for 5 months at that point. Helped me get an apartment, helped me get a mattress. We just had a mattress on the ground, or I just had a mattress on the ground. That was the only thing in the apartment. So it's crazy, man. You just got to figure it out and be flexible, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, was she surprised, just real quick, was she surprised, Aaliyah, when you're like, oh, it's not like in the NFL, you're like, I'm going to have surgery. You're like, I'm having surgery tomorrow at 6:30. Was that a shock for her, how the medical system works when you got an injury like that?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think she was expecting just more time. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, it's, when you tear your ACL, it's, okay, let's see how strong your quad is to see if your quad and calf muscles and everything surrounding your knee can handle the surgery. And I guess I tore it pretty clean, so I was ready for surgery right away, and that kind of took our relationship to the next level. Came home from surgery, threw up on her a little bit when I got out of the car.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, because not only did you have a phenomenal career and recovery from surgery, you man, you are one of our favorite teammates in what you've done after the game. You have an NFT project that actually brings value to people. I've been to your Super Bowl parties that you throw. That then led to a Big 3 ownership team. You're a photographer as well and have all this skill. So what have you built since football?
Man, so since football, kind of towards the tail end of my football career, as you guys probably know, I started shooting photography.
Great Super Bowl pictures.
Yeah, I would be that dude before away games when everybody's outside at the plane. I was like, yeah, I got you. I can take your picture. I would take pictures of people outside the plane, run on the plane, open my computer, edit the pictures, and send them to everybody that I just took pictures of before we took off. So that was like the beginnings of my photography journey, which I love. I still love shooting photography. But other than that, a wellness company called Magic Wellness, which is primarily a CBD company. Might get into some other functional, holistic therapeutics.
Hey, put us on the list for the test. The test subjects, the first clients.
Absolutely, we got you, man. So Magic Wellness, photography, the NFT industry,
which is
doing
ACEs, right?
The ACEs, which is a membership, basically a lifestyle branded membership. We have 3,000 members worldwide. That basically, when we launched, put cryptocurrency into a community treasury, which is what we voted on to buy that Big 3 basketball team last year, which we're going into the second year of our ownership with Big 3 Power, which is in first place.
Let's go.
Come on. Yeah. No surprise the champ again.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah, man. So, just, trying not to start too much, learning along the way, learning what it means to count the cost before I, jump into new endeavors, count the cost financially, relationally. There's a lot of, things that you need to focus on before just jumping into businesses. So definitely learning along the way.
Can you talk a little bit about your transition? Because I think that's one of the toughest things that athletes, CEOs, whoever it may be, that transition. We've had another guest on here that talked about the transition in terms of, him leaving a company and the identity. I call it the LOL syndrome, loss of logo. Like, can you talk a little bit about what your transition was like?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think I'm still transitioning. I don't know if I'll ever not be transitioning out of being an athlete, whether it be professional or, a lifetime of football and basketball, really. I love that LOL, because that's something that I definitely felt and still feel from time to time. And, a lot of it for me was this, I didn't really have this identity issue. I knew that my worth was bigger than football. Mm-hmm. That comes from a foundation of faith and, those sorts of relationships. But that doesn't change the fact that other people look at me as, hey, this is Jordan. He has the longest punt return Super Bowl history.
Yeah.
Right. And first of all, that's just like a weird stat. Like, who cares, honestly? Or maybe I'm just...
I care.
That's pretty awesome.
Okay, well, you out there.
I care.
We care. Thousands of others.
Yeah, well, but you get it. It's like, okay, it's... At some point, I wanted to move on from being introduced that way, for sure. But at the same time, I liked it, because it gives me some notoriety. It gives me a free appetizer at Red Lobster or something. Right. So it's kind of you try to play both sides of it. So that being said, when Tony broke the record in February, there was like this little sense of relief, like, okay, hopefully I don't need to get introduced now as Jordan Norwood with the longest punt return in Super Bowl history. Even though it still happens, right. which is fine.
I get the same thing with Peyton, catching Peyton's last pass. It's like, no, I totally get that. But continue to tell me about like the transition in terms of all the business endeavors. What was the first move in terms of like, okay, I'm done playing football, and this is now what I'm doing?
Sure. Yeah, so the first move was photography and videography. So we actually, and by we I mean my wife Aaliyah and I, we started shooting in 2016. Really, we shot like family portraits for Todd Davis and some other teammates while I was still playing. So that just kind of carried over pretty quickly into a professional photography career, mostly shooting. Like professional headshots. We got looped in with the high school senior portrait, scene, and we were the go-to photographer at a couple high schools.
Nice.
Shooting high school senior portraits, and then we would shoot a couple weddings, also each year. Which that was probably the most trying piece of the transition. All of it was kind of trying, but and when I say that, I mean working with my wife and having me coming from such a structured background of organized sports and, inputting certain actions and behaviors to get certain results, I was just a little bit too much. I was like, okay, babe, we're going to shoot this wedding. You need this little bungee cord on your hip, right? That has the shot list that's laminated. And you need a Sharpie that you can check off the shots that you get at the wedding to make sure we don't miss any shots. In your other pocket, why don't you make sure you have 6 batteries? Just just way too much, right? My wife's like,
I'm struggling with that right now.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do all that. Nobody's that worked up about, they want to make sure, the details, like we are every single week in the Professional Football League. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned is there's no, at least for me at this point, there's nothing that directly compares one-to-one with being in between the lines on a football field. You have to be there mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. You need to be all there, focused, or else you'll make a mistake or get hurt. And you can't take that type of intensity into, shooting photography with your wife.
Right.
Not advised, at least.
Maybe you can, but, it didn't work for me. And, I found that in a lot of business instances, that type of intensity, it doesn't work. In small doses, it might work here and there, but as a strategy and approach, it's typically too intense.
What was your, every athlete that's successful after the sport is successful saying no. What's your process for saying no to a deal or to a new opportunity that really doesn't fit with what you want to do?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've had to learn, especially, probably in the last 3 years. I've intentionally learned it, I guess. But I just have some structure and boundaries in place.
What are those?
I have relational boundaries. So I know that I'm going to spend a certain amount of time with my wife and kids on a weekly basis. That's non-negotiable. The ability to get up and travel with my wife and kids at this point is non-negotiable. So those kind of relational boundaries. There's financial boundaries that might be a little bit more obvious. If I don't have the cash, then I'm not going to act like I do to invest in something. And then from a business standpoint, there's some, maybe moral sorts of boundaries. Boundaries that relate to my faith. That hey, that's just not for me. I'm happy to pass this down the line. I know some, guys that I played with or. People that I've interacted with over the years that might be interested, but
that have no morals.
Yes.
Yes. Don't say their names. Don't say their names.
Y'all two are good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that's how you put it together.
Yeah, boundaries are great. Boundaries give you the freedom. That's what I say. But I don't think boundaries take away freedom. I think they give you the freedom to navigate things the way you want to.
Talk about ownership, being an owner of a Big Three team and talk about, you talked a little bit about how that came about, but talk about what that's like in terms of going to the games and owning the team. Talk a little bit about that ownership piece. And now that you're on the other side, being an owner.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So actually the Big Three, the basketball league, Ice Cube and his team, they actually sold NFTs last year that represent ownership in their 12 teams. So with that, that's what we purchased as the ACES group. Okay. We purchased these NFTs that represent ownership. So we actually co-own the team with the Big Three league. The league itself pays for the player salaries, travel, lodging, and we get to do some really cool things as an ownership group, monetize the brand name of the team, sell merchandise, get people courtside at the games, and have some other, really cool experiences. But it's all really cool. So the coolest part, number one, is that I get to interact with Katino Mobley, who's somebody somebody that I looked up to playing when he was playing alongside Steve Francis for the Houston Rockets in the NBA. So getting to interact with people like him, Nancy Lieberman, who's our coach, Royce White, who had an NBA career also. It's just really cool just getting the chance to interact, and then at the same time trying to figure out how we can serve our team in a way that I would have liked to be served, as a player in a professional league. So also have a lot of room to be creative with the league being, kind of smaller and not, not as it's growing. So we have room to be creative with what we can do with our team and with our players. And we're excited to do a lot of that this offseason.
Can you talk about what you would have wanted different now that you're on the owner side of things and how you're looking at that? What would you have wanted to be different in the NFL as you think about just yourself as the player?
I would say that most of what I wanted to be different just depends on the organization, first of all. When I was here with the Broncos, it was a lot different than when I was in Cleveland with the Browns. Or it was a lot different than I was in Tampa Bay for 1 week, and I was happy I got cut.
Let them know. Sometimes they do you a favor.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm good on this. But but yeah, I think most of it just comes down to, for me, it comes down to stability. As an undrafted player, always fighting to make a team. Once you do make the team, you want to feel like you've made the team. And you don't get that all the time in every organization. I got a lot of that as I was kind of touching on with the Broncos. Being able to say, hey, my wife's in labor, I'm out of here, not thinking that I'm going to lose, my job or even just my spot in the lineup that week, which is definitely the case in plenty of organizations across the country. And then there's other things like just general stinginess in some organizations that I never understood. And I think a lot of that, again, is being an undrafted free agent, going to the equipment people in one particular organization and asking for another pair of socks and having to go show them my other pair of socks before I got a new pair of socks.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they took 3 pairs that morning. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And they got plenty of stuff back there, which is crazy.
My last question for you, Jordan, and I was excited to ask you this since we knew you were coming on. A lot of people in life are not loud or, audible, but they're super strong, And when I think about that Super Bowl 50 team, we had some loud, outrageous cats, and you were one of the strongest on there. What do you say to people who may not have the exterior that shows a bravado or shows the confidence? How do people still remain confident and be themselves? How did you do that?
That's a good question. For me, that confidence always has come from being grounded in who I am and my identity. And, all of that, like I've mentioned, relates back to my faith. And, and that's something that I struggled with a little bit early in my NFL career, just like a lot of us, right? Getting dropped in a random city at, 21, 22 years old, trying to sort out if you're going to make a football team, trying to sort out who your friends are in that city, and how you should act and move, and, being undrafted, seeing other people that were drafted and make a lot more money than you move a certain way. That's kind of an interesting thing to navigate. And professionally, I would say that consistency is something that has always done well for me, whether it's on the practice field or, in my own household, in private, just being consistent in the positive things, at least, is something that goes a long way. And I think that's what I would encourage is finding this foundational piece of, answering that why question, and answering it from a standpoint of identity, rather than like a task-oriented standpoint. Like who am I is an important question to answer.
Love that. And to finish up, I got to ask, give me your favorite Peyton Manning story.
Oh, man. My favorite Peyton story is Sanctuary Golf. So we go out to the Sanctuary and golf every year, or we used to. I think they still do. But my group, we had this rookie. You might remember him. I can't remember. I can never remember his name. But light-skinned dude, like curly hair. He was a safety. I think he's the same year as you, maybe the year younger. But anyways, he was in our group of 4. Peyton is the group behind us, and we walk up to this tee box where you have to walk up some steps. It's elevated, beautiful view. Peyton's group had caught up to us, so he's like, "Hey guys, let's walk up to this tee box real quick. Hop up here." And this rookie is the last one up to the tee box, and Peyton has all of us stand basically facing the wrong direction on the tee box. And it's just a neighborhood. Like, it's clearly just a neighborhood. But he's like, "Hey, rookie, you're up. Let's see what you got." And this rookie just puts his ball on the tee and hits it directly into a neighborhood. He was so nervous.
Oh.
Like, just directly into a neighborhood.
Peyton.
Yeah. I mean, he hit a great ball, but
into a neighborhood.
just directly into the neighborhood. And Peyton's like, that's a pretty good shot. Okay, guys, let's turn around and hit it the right way now. And this dude,
Peyton always
You let it
jokes.
happen too. You didn't tell him to turn around.
Hey, man, we weren't going to win that tournament anyways.
Rookie's got to learn.
Rookie's got to learn.
Well, Jordan, man, appreciate you, man. It's always good to see you, man, and glad to see you're thriving. I think just the way you've transitioned with the grace, the humility into life after football, I think that's just something to be commended, and I think a lot of people will continue to learn from you and the direction that you're going in. So, man, thank you for joining us on the Gridiron and Growth podcast.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me.